Myatka, Burma, August 1944. After the liberation of Matkina on August 10, 1944, following a grueling 78-day siege, American forces uncovered a shocking reality: the first detailed documentation of Japan's comfort women system. 20 Korean women and 2 Japanese civilian operators of comfort stations were captured. The U.S. Office of War Information's Psychological Warfare Unit carried out interrogations that became Japanese. Prisoner of War Interrogation Report Number 49. This report was the first official American record of what would later be recognized as one of the largest systems of sexual slavery in modern history. The women explained that in 1942, they had been recruited in Korea under the promise of factory work in Singapore. Instead, they were transported via Rangoon to the Burmese frontier as part of a larger group, where they were forced into sexual slavery. Declassified in 1973, the report described living conditions, operational rules, and the systematic organization of what the Japanese military euphemistically called comfort stations. Across the Pacific, what American forces were discovering was staggering. Historian Yoshimi Yoshiaki later documented nearly 2,000 comfort stations stretching from China to the Dutch East Indies, with roughly 200,000 women enslaved. From Burma's jungles to Manila's ruins, from China's mountains to the islands of the Dutch East Indies, Allied forces found women who had survived industrial-scale sexual slavery. On September 7, 1944, less than a month after Matkina, another significant record emerged at Shan in China's Yunnan province. U.S.-China Allied forces liberated Korean comfort women while assaulting Japanese positions. Private Charles Hatfield of the U.S. Army's 164th Signal Photo Company took a photograph that became one of the most important visual documents of comfort women liberation. It showed 4 Korean women being led to safety by Chinese soldiers, one visibly pregnant. Sergeant Edward Fay filmed motion picture footage of the same event. These images, now housed in the U.S. National Archives, provided crucial visual proof decades later. The pregnant woman in the photograph was eventually identified as Park Young-sim. She would testify publicly about her experience at the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal in Tokyo in 2000. 56 years later, military records indicate that of the 24 comfort women at Shan, only 10 survived to liberation. 14 were killed in the bombardments preceding the Allied assault. The Allied Translator and Interpreter Section, ATIS, established September 19, 1942 under Colonel Sidney F. Masher, became the main intelligence unit documenting the comfort women system. By 1945, ATIS had grown to nearly 4,000 personnel, mostly Nisei Japanese Americans, processing thousands of captured documents revealing the bureaucratic machinery behind sexual slavery. Research Report Number 120. Amenities in the Japanese Armed Forces, submitted directly to General MacArthur, offered the most comprehensive Allied documentation of the system. Its November 15, 1945 edition expanded to 42 pages from the February edition's 22, including captured Japanese military regulations as annexes. These documents, archived in U.S. National Archives Record Groups 165, 331, 407, and 554, initially classified comfort stations under amusements or brothels rather than war crimes, a reflection of contemporary understanding that would take decades to correct. Captured regulations revealed standardized procedures across the Pacific. The Huayu Comfort Station Regulations from Nanjing, dated March 6, 1939, outlined medical examination schedules, fee structures based on military rank, operating hours, and mandatory condom use. Mandalay Garrison Headquarters issued 30 detailed regulations, officially listing women as licensed prostitutes but under strict military oversight. Military transport documents showed Army cargo ships moving comfort women from Japan and Korea, requiring specific Ministry of War permission. Railway orders transported women in freight cars marked as military supplies. Every movement required multiple approvals, triplicate forms, and official seals, creating bureaucratic proof even when other records were destroyed. The documents systematically disguised reality. Terms like special service personnel meant sex slaves. Comfort facilities meant rape stations. Medical treatment often meant forced abortions. Amenities described systematic rape as entertainment. This language influenced how comfort women were treated during liberation, leaving many outside standard categories. They were neither prisoners of war, civilian internees, nor military personnel. The liberation of the Philippines from October 1944 to July 1945 revealed the most extensive comfort station network encountered by American forces. When the U.S. 1st Cavalry Division entered Manila on February 3, 1945, they aimed to free 3,185 Allied civilian internees at St. Thomas University. They passed through districts where comfort stations had operated for 3 years. Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, SCAP, records later documented 12 comfort stations and 5 brothels in Manila alone, with additional stations across the archipelago: Bayambong in North Luzon, Masbate in Central Visayas, Iloilo and Panay Island with 2 stations housing 1216 and 1011 women respectively, Cebu, Tacloban with 9 Filipino women, Butuan on Mindanao with 3 Filipino women, Cagayan on Mindanao with 3 stations total, and Davao on Mindanao with mixed nationality comfort women. The 37th Infantry Division engaged in intense urban combat during the month-long Battle of Manila, lasting until March 3, 1945. The 148th Infantry Regiment liberated the Philippine General Hospital and the University of the Philippines on February 17th, freeing 7,000 civilians. During these operations, American forces systematically uncovered comfort stations in the Malate, Binondo, and Quiapo districts. Financial records from the Japanese 14th Area Army Headquarters revealed the economic exploitation behind the system. Women were charged for food, clothing, and medical treatment at rates exceeding their earnings, creating debt bondage. Military paymasters controlled all transactions. Women never received actual currency. Payment vouchers show soldiers were charged based on rank: 2 yen for privates, 3 yen for non-commissioned officers, with officers receiving special arrangements. Among those liberated in the Philippines was Maria Rosa L. Henson, born December 5, 1927. She had been assaulted by Japanese soldiers in February 1942 at age 14, rescued later through Filipino guerrillas collaborating with American forces. The liberation of women like her, Park Young-sim, and countless others revealed the full scope of Japan's systematic sexual slavery and provided documentation that would become central to historical records and war crimes tribunals. In April 1943, Maria Rosa L. Henson was forced into comfort woman service for 9 months. Philippine guerrillas rescued her in January 1944 as American forces prepared to return to the Philippines. Henson would later break nearly 50 years of silence, becoming the first Filipino woman to speak publicly about her experience in 1992. In 1996, she became one of the first recipients of the Asian Women's Fund project. Her testimony offered detailed documentation of comfort station operations in the Philippines and highlighted the role of local guerrilla forces in liberation efforts. American forces faced an unprecedented shock when they invaded Okinawa on April 1, 1945. Intelligence had predicted the presence of some comfort stations, but the reality far exceeded expectations. Historical records show over 145 stations on an island just 70 miles long. During the Okinawa campaign, involving the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions and others, comfort stations were uncovered in nearly every major town and military installation. Naha alone contained 17 former comfort stations. Military intelligence reports indicated the women included Koreans, Taiwanese, and Okinawans, with ages as young as 14 years old. In areas where Japanese forces collapsed quickly, unexpected discoveries occurred. Near Shuri, the island's ancient capital, Marines from the 1st Division found cave complexes where Japanese forces had hidden Korean comfort women. The women had been told that Americans would torture and eat them, propaganda intended to encourage suicide rather than capture. Some were even given hand grenades in order to kill themselves instead of being taken prisoner. The scale of documentation on Okinawa overwhelmed available translators. By May 1945, ATIS had deployed 3 full translation teams to process thousands of documents related to comfort station operations. These documents detailed duty rosters showing women forced to service 30 to 40 men per day during peak periods, medical records documenting forced abortions and sterilizations, and payment ledgers showing military control over every financial aspect of the system. The Military Intelligence Service, MIS, primarily composed of Nisei Japanese Americans, played a crucial role in documenting comfort women discoveries. Merrill's Marauders, the 5th 307th Composite Unit Provisional under Brigadier General Frank D. Merrill, had operated behind Japanese lines in Burma during 1944, with 14 Japanese-American MI's translators interrogating captured comfort station personnel. After the unit disbanded on August 10, 1944, the Mars Task Force, led by Brigadier General John P. Willey, succeeded them. This unit included the 475th Infantry Regiment and 124th Cavalry Regiment, each with teams of 12 Nisei language specialists continuing liberation operations in northern Burma. Translators faced immense challenges. The women spoke Korean, Chinese, Tagalog, Indonesian, Dutch, and numerous regional dialects. Many Korean women had been forbidden to speak their native language for so long that communication was difficult even with Korean-speaking translators. Cultural barriers made discussing sexual trauma almost impossible, with many women refusing to speak to male translators. The documents also revealed the system's racial hierarchy. Korean women classified as Class A, Chinese as Class B, and Southeast Asian women as Class C. Different stations served different ranks, and officer-only stations contained fewer women, but subjected them to more extreme abuse. Documentation revealed that rape was organized according to military rank and racial prejudice. The liberation of the Dutch East Indies, coinciding with Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, exposed the enslavement of European women. Jan Ruffo Harn, born in Java in 1923, was forced into a brothel in 1944 at age 21. In February 1944, she and 9 other Dutch women were taken from the Ambarawa internment camp. They spent 4 months at a comfort station in Serang before being transferred to a camp in Batavia, where they were liberated on August 15, 1945. Jan Ruffo Harn broke decades of silence with her 1994 memoir 50 Years of Silence and testified at a U.S. congressional hearing in 2007, providing detailed accounts of the Japanese military sexual slavery system. British and Australian forces documented comfort station discoveries across Java. Australian naval personnel repatriated Indonesian comfort women from Labuan, Borneo. The Bogor camp in West Java was established exclusively for women forced into military brothels, while Batavia camps processed 2,500 women and children during post-liberation operations. Dutch military authorities initially suppressed information about comfort stations involving Dutch women, sealing records to protect the women's honor, which delayed justice and recognition for decades. Allied medical teams examined liberated comfort women and documented severe health consequences. U.S. Office of War Information Report Number 49 recorded widespread malnutrition, with victims averaging 32% body weight loss. Sexually transmitted diseases were common. Military medical reports noted high rates of syphilis and gonorrhea, often treated with toxic substances like salvon and aranamine, causing sterility and other serious complications. Forced abortions, sterilizations, and severe reproductive damage from repeated sexual assault were also documented. Medical records revealed systematic brutality. Women were severely malnourished, weighing only 60 to 70 pounds instead of their normal 100 to 120. Nutritional deficiency diseases were widespread, including scurvy, beriberi, and pellagra, resembling conditions found in concentration camps. Military medical personnel provided treatment with newly available sulfa drugs and penicillin, representing significant wartime medical advancements. However, psychological care for sexual trauma was virtually non-existent. Medical staff recorded hysteria, melancholia, and nervous exhaustion, terms that inadequately described what would later be understood as severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Military doctors' signatures appear on forced abortion records, including one Philippine station where 15 forced abortions were performed in a single month. Sterilization procedures were recorded at multiple locations, highlighting the calculated systemic cruelty inflicted on women across Japanese-controlled territories. Medical records from the war showed that comfort women were treated not as patients in need of care, but as military equipment requiring maintenance. The U.S. Army's 164th Signal Photo Company captured critical visual evidence beyond Sean. Signal Corps photographers systematically documented liberated comfort stations across the Pacific, photographing the small cubicles where women were held, military-issued bedding, examination tables, and boxes of military condoms. Although these images were intended for intelligence purposes, They unintentionally created a detailed visual record of the infrastructure of systematic sexual slavery. Classified for decades, the photographs revealed the standardized nature of comfort stations. In the Philippines, Burma, and Pacific Islands, facilities followed similar layouts. Converted buildings divided into small rooms just large enough for a military cot, with communal washing areas and medical examination rooms. The military precision of these setups was apparent in every photograph. Photographers also captured the women at liberation, showing extreme malnutrition, untreated injuries, and the vacant, traumatized expressions that reflected years of abuse. While the images attempted to preserve dignity, they provided undeniable visual proof of systemic violence. The United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, UNRRA, established in November 1943, managed the vast repatriation effort after the war. By 1946, UNRWA had 11,000 staff and operated hundreds of displaced persons camps across former Japanese-occupied territories. Between May and June 1945 alone, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAF, repatriated 25 million displaced persons at a rate of 80,000 per day. Comfort women were processed within the general civilian population without specialized care. Their ambiguous status, neither prisoners of war, civilian internees, nor military personnel, affected access to medical care and transportation. Many women received minimal assistance despite severe trauma, and many could not or would not return home. Some cases highlight the ongoing consequences of this limbo. Bibongi, for example, remained in Okinawa after liberation, classified as a stateless Korean under U.S. military rule, and later became an illegal alien when Okinawa returned to Japan in 1972. Korean women in China lost their native language after decades of isolation. Some married locally for protection and survival. The American Red Cross, with 5 million volunteers and 39,000 paid staff at its 1945 peak, provided comfort items and non-medical support through programs like the Gray Ladies, who offered psychological first aid to displaced persons. However, language and cultural barriers limited the effectiveness of this aid. The focus remained on rapid repatriation rather than addressing trauma. Cultural stigma further complicated recovery. In Confucian societies, female chastity was tied to family honor. Women who had been raped were seen as bringing shame, and families often preferred to believe daughters had died rather than acknowledge their experiences. In Catholic Philippines, sexual abuse survivors faced social ostracism, while Indonesian Muslim communities struggled to accept women who had been forcibly defiled. Post-war justice failed to address these crimes adequately. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East, operating from April 29, 1946 to November 12, 1948, heard 419 witnesses and examined 4,336 exhibits, but made only one direct reference to forced prostitution in its judgment, concerning the Chinese city of Guilin, where Japanese forces had coerced women under the pretext of factory work and then forced them into sexual slavery. Crucial legal precedents came instead from the Dutch Batavia Temporary Court-Martial, which conducted 4 of 171 cases specifically on forced prostitution between August 1946 and December 1949. The Samarang incident verdict on February 14, 1948, sentenced Army Major Ocarda to death and imposed 2 life to 20-year sentences on 11 others for forcing approximately 35 Dutch women from internment camps into comfort stations. In April 2007, researchers Yoshimi Yoshiaki and Hyapumi Hayashi discovered 7 official documents in the Tokyo Trials archives, showing that Tokettai Naval Military Police had forced women into frontline brothels in China, Indochina, and Indonesia. These documents had existed for 60 years but remained unprosecuted, highlighting a decades-long failure to consider sexual slavery a serious crime. This failure denied survivors recognition and justice while leaving perpetrators free. For 46 years after liberation, comfort women largely remained silent. That changed on August 14, 1991, when Kim Hak-soon publicly identified herself as a former comfort woman. Her press conference opened the door for survivors across Asia to speak out. Although details of her liberation remain less documented, her courage sparked a wave of testimonies validating the documentary evidence collected by American forces decades earlier. In January 1992, Historian Yoshimi Yoshiaki uncovered documents at Japan's defense agency National Institute for Defense Studies that transformed understanding of the comfort women system. The archives contained direct evidence of Japanese military involvement, including orders to establish comfort stations and regulations, showing military control and supervision. The Shanghai Expeditionary Force Diary from 1932 included an entry by Senior Staff Officer Okabunao Sabaru, detailing the establishment of the first comfort station during the Shanghai incident. These findings confirmed survivors' testimonies, proving that the comfort women system was official military policy, not the actions of rogue units. Following Kim Hak-soon's testimony, other survivors began speaking publicly. Young Soo Lee, taken as a teenager from Tue, Korea, testified before the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Relations Committee in 2007. Her testimony, along with accounts from two other survivors, contributed to the passage of U.S. House Resolution 121, urging Japan to fully accept responsibility for the comfort women system. Park Young-sim, the pregnant woman in the famous Sunshine photograph, testified at the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal in Tokyo in 2000, finally putting a name and story to one of the war's most iconic images. She described being taken at age 17 and enduring 3 years of sexual slavery. In 2003, a survivor visited the Nanjing Leaks Comfort Station site where she had been held before being transferred to Shan. Il-chul Kang, taken forcibly to China in 1943, could not return to Korea after the war and stayed in China, working as a nurse until 2000. She traveled to the United States multiple times to raise awareness about comfort women, and her painting Girls Being Burnt inspired the feature film Spirit's Homecoming. Her story highlighted the long-term displacement and ongoing effects caused by the comfort women system. The 1990s and 2000s brought a wave of archival discoveries worldwide. American archives released declassified Signal Corps photographs showing comfort stations across the Pacific. Medical reports documented systematic abuse, and intelligence documents revealed the military infrastructure that supported sexual slavery. Between 2014 and 2015, Chinese archives released over 90 documents from the Kwanong Army Military Police Corps archives in Guilin. These records confirmed that the Japanese Army funded the purchase of comfort women and included detailed financial records from puppet regime banks in Manchuria for special personnel procurement. Research by Professor Su Jilang estimated that approximately 200,000 Chinese women were forced into comfort stations, accounting for 36% of all comfort women. Demographic studies showed that stations spread from Japan and China to the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Burma, New Guinea, Hong Kong, Macau, French Indochina, Korea, and Taiwan, demonstrating the system's vast reach. The demographic breakdown reflected a strict racial hierarchy: 51, 8% Korean, 36% Chinese, 2% Japanese, with others including Filipino, Taiwanese, Indonesian, Burmese, Dutch, and Australian women. The system was tightly integrated into military organization. High Command issued establishment orders, regional staff officers created operational plans, local military police provided oversight, and military doctors conducted regular examinations. Among the most chilling discoveries were disposal orders found at multiple locations. These orders, issued as Allied forces advanced, instructed the elimination of comfort women to prevent their capture and testimony. Massacre sites in the Philippines, such as Mapaniki village, confirmed these orders were carried out. On November 23, 1944, Japanese forces attempted to kill comfort women before American troops arrived. Similar incidents occurred across the Pacific during retreats, and historians estimate that up to 75% of comfort women died, reflecting not just harsh conditions but deliberate killing to prevent witnesses from testifying. Japanese propaganda also played a major role in complicating liberation. Women were told that Americans would torture and eat them. British accounts from Burma noted that Korean comfort women were shocked to find the British were not going to harm them. The terror imposed by Japanese forces discouraged escape and encouraged suicide over capture. Reports documented women given grenades to kill themselves rather than fall into Allied hands. The psychological conditioning persisted even after physical liberation. Women often hid, attempted suicide, or stayed in comfort stations even after Japanese troops had fled. unable to initially comprehend that Allied forces intended to help. Occupation forces in Japan in late 1945 discovered that the comfort women system extended into the home islands. Military authorities found stations operating at training bases and military installations. Even more troubling, Japan had prepared facilities for occupation forces through the Recreation and Amusement Association, which recruited thousands of Japanese women as special entertainers. General MacArthur immediately banned the program due to moral and public health concerns, though enforcement varied. Navy documentation revealed that the Japanese military had kept detailed statistics on comfort women throughout the war. These records, quickly classified, showed the massive scale of the system. Registration forms, medical inspection schedules, and financial records demonstrated that sexual slavery was embedded into military operations at every level. One significant gap in historical records is the lack of detailed first-hand accounts from American soldiers who liberated comfort women. Collections from the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, the National World War II Museum, and other military historical archives show minimal documentation from liberators' perspectives. Several factors explain this absence. Japanese military records were systematically destroyed at the war's end. The comfort women issue remained taboo for decades after 1945. American military documentation focused on tactical operations, not social encounters. Many comfort women died during the war, or were killed by retreating Japanese forces before liberation. The silence from American military personnel reflected both the shock of discoveries and the lack of a framework for understanding organized sexual slavery. Military protocols existed for liberating POWs and civilian internees, but not for victims of systematic rape. This institutional gap contributed to the decades-long invisibility of comfort women's experiences. From 1945 to 1991, comfort women remained hidden in history. Government compensation went to recognized POWs and civilian internees, but comfort women, unclassified and unacknowledged, received nothing. Silence was enforced by all parties. The Japanese government destroyed records and denied responsibility. Allied governments classified documents and avoided difficult questions, and Asian governments prioritized development over advocacy for victims. Breakthroughs came through survivors' courage. Kim Hak-soon's testimony on August 14, 1991, marked the first public acknowledgement by a former comfort woman. Her press conference inspired other survivors across Asia to come forward, validating decades of documentary evidence gathered by American forces. In 2000, the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal provided a forum for 64 survivors from 8 countries to testify formally. While lacking legal authority, the tribunal created a comprehensive record of survivor testimony, confirming the full scale of suffering that had remained hidden for nearly half a century. In 2007, the U.S. House of Representatives passed Resolution 121, formally recognizing the suffering of comfort women. The resolution urged Japan to clearly acknowledge, apologize, and accept responsibility for the military's coercion of women into sexual slavery. This official recognition, coming 62 years after liberation, highlighted how long the path from rescue to acknowledgement had been. Modern studies of comfort women survivors show the extreme psychological impact of their experiences. Research indicates a 90% lifetime prevalence of PTSD, with 65% still showing symptoms decades later, rates significantly higher than those documented among Holocaust survivors, who show a 39% prevalence. These numbers confirm the severe trauma military medical personnel observed, but poorly understood in 1945. The scope of the comfort women system reveals its systematic nature. It operated from 1932 to 1945 across the entire Japanese Empire, following standardized regulations in thousands of facilities. Military logistics controlled transportation, medical services, and financial management, while racial hierarchies were embedded in operational procedures. These figures and organizational details illustrate industrial-scale sexual slavery, executed with military precision and bureaucratic efficiency. The system's very structure, its documentation, standardization, and scale, provided proof of its existence, despite decades of denial. Evidence survived attempts at destruction. Military translators' reports, Signal Corps photographs, medical records, and intelligence documents created an archive that could not be erased. When survivors began speaking, their testimonies matched the records hidden in classified files, confirming decades of hidden history. Every captured regulation, photographed comfort station, and translated document contributed to an irrefutable case. The meticulous bureaucracy that Japanese military applied to sexual slavery became undeniable proof of systematic war crimes. Documents designed to organize exploitation instead became evidence of atrocity. American soldiers who discovered comfort stations likely never imagined that their routine documentation would become crucial evidence in a decades-long fight for recognition. Photographs, reports, and translations created a permanent record that survived attempts at denial and forgetting. By 2024, fewer than 20 Korean comfort women survivors remained alive. Their testimonies, validated by the documentary evidence collected by American forces during liberation, stand as indisputable proof of systematic war crimes. Comfort women statues worldwide now serve as silent testimony to suffering long denied. The comfort women discovered by American forces represented one of World War II's most extensive war crimes. Military reports, photographs, and survivor testimonies documented liberation, yet decades passed before the full scale was recognized. Standardized regulations, military transportation, medical infrastructure, and financial systems demonstrated that the system was official policy, not incidental battlefield abuse. Immediate recognition and justice failed due to multiple factors: military bureaucracy unprepared for organized sexual crimes, cultural stigmas silencing victims, political decisions prioritizing stability over accountability, and gender biases minimizing sexual violence. These failures extended suffering for decades beyond liberation. Yet the evidence endured. Signal Corps photographs, intelligence reports, and medical records confirmed what survivors had insisted for decades. The liberation provided by American forces in 1944 to 1945 started a process that continues today, with survivors still seeking full acknowledgement and official apology. The story of comfort women teaches the harsh realities of war, trauma, and justice. Physical liberation does not automatically bring psychological freedom. Rescue without recognition perpetuates suffering. Documentation without prosecution allows denial. American forces who encountered comfort women faced events beyond their training or comprehension. Their records, however, created a historical archive that would eventually support justice. Women liberated in 1944 to 1945 often struggled to accept freedom. Trauma ran deeper than physical captivity. They had been told they were worthless, that death was preferable to their shame, and that no one would accept them again. Liberation challenged these deeply ingrained beliefs, creating cognitive dissonance many could never fully resolve. The documentary evidence, from Report Number 49 to the Sunshine photographs, ATIS translations, and Signal Corps images, provides indisputable proof of systematic war crimes. The Japanese military's bureaucratic precision in sexual slavery, captured in Allied intelligence files, cannot be denied. As the last survivors pass away, their testimonies, backed by every document, photograph, and report collected by American forces, become even more critical. For the women who initially struggled to believe in their liberation, the experience revealed a deeper truth. True freedom requires more than physical release. It requires acknowledgement, belief, and restoration of humanity. Their decades-long fight for recognition continues the liberation process begun by American soldiers 80 years ago. Today, the evidence is clear. Survivor testimonies are confirmed. The systematic nature of the comfort women system is proven. The journey from physical liberation to public acknowledgement represents one of history's longest struggles for justice, a struggle supported by the extensive archive of truth created by American forces when they first encountered Japan's comfort women. Liberation was only the beginning. Full recognition, accountability, and healing remain ongoing battles. American soldiers preserved evidence of one of history's largest systematic war crimes, creating a record that demands acknowledgement. The story of comfort women challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about war, gender, and justice, reminding us that liberation is a process, not a single moment. Even as survivors' numbers dwindle, their struggle for full justice continues.